This next story is an emergency, is a constitutional crisis, and it's sparking even Republicans to finally, at least some of them, say we should do some congressional oversight maybe. Maybe we should use some of our constitutional power to rein in what appears to be blatant war crimes by Pete Hegseth. Washington Post reports Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike, officials say, kill them all. As two men clung to a stricken, burning ship targeted by SEAL Team 6, the Joint Special Operations Commander followed the Defense Secretary's order to leave no survivors. So there's already been major legal questions, I'll put it most mildly, about saying, I don't know where that boat's going. I don't know what it has on it necessarily, but we are going to assume that it's dangerous drugs, and we're going to assume it's coming to the United States, and we're going to label that as a threat to the United States, and we're going to strike these boats and not ask any questions. As we've learned, some journalists have been able to track down specific people who were on these boats, and it's not at all what the Trump administration is trying to label them as narco-terrorists. I'll give you more information on that in a second. But that, I guess you could say, if you wanted to give something to the Trump administration to be a debate, that would be it. I still don't think there's much of a debate. Just unilaterally, extrajudicially killing people for being in a boat that you think has drugs on it already seems very illegal. And then you get to this, and there's just not really a question. There's just not a question sparking the leaders of the House Armed Services Committee saying they're seeking full accounting of an early September U.S. military attack against an alleged drug trafficking boat in the Caribbean after a report alleged that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered U.S. troops to kill everybody aboard the vessel, even after the boat had been blown up. So thinking about like the laws of war, and I can actually read a post here by Phil. Under the laws of war, you never attack anyone who is shipwrecked, wounded, defenseless, or already in your power. Those two men clinging to the wreckage were exactly that. Ordering their death anyway crosses an even brighter line. The ban on no quarter, the absolute rule that you do not kill people who cannot fight back. Every commander knows this. Every officer is trained on it. These are not obscure legal theories. They're the bedrock of lawful command. Yet the Secretary of Defense still gave the order, kill everybody. After the first strike, after operators saw survivors in the water, after it was clear they posed no threat, a second missile was launched just to finish the job. Hegseth didn't make a tough call. He made an unlawful one. And the circumstances there are just so clear. We already don't have any transparency on how they're labeling these people, how they pose a present danger to us, if we have this legal authority. But then to take defenseless people who are just hanging on to now a blown up, probably just pieces of a blown up boat, and going, they're completely defenseless, kill them. Here's Adam Kinzinger, who was, of course, in the military, former Republican congressman, describing this.
Now, let me just tell you what happened. The commander made the decision, SEAL Team 6, to go and finish these two off and kill them, okay? Let me just be very clear. That is illegal. So here's the rule in the water, not to mention the fact that at that moment, those two are not combatants because they've been in effect neutralized. This is the equivalent of shooting a prisoner, shooting somebody who's surrendering, or shooting a civilian, which obviously gets done, but the United States opposes and is a war crime. So there's that whole thing, which is they're unarmed combatants at that moment. They do not have, even if you want to argue that the people with a boat carrying drugs represents a clear and present danger, at that point, there is no boat. Very likely the drugs are gone because the boat was struck, and you have two people that are just simply trying to survive. The obligation then at that point for the United States is to actually rescue those two. We're obligated. It's also the law of the maritime law, which is a distressed sailor or a distressed boater Regardless of national origin, regardless of anything, you save them.
So describing it there. And then one case that we discussed was who are some examples of these people? And we still don't have any clarity on how the War Department, how Hegseth and the people under him are determining what it is that they're hitting and why they have justification. And they're not being transparent to Congress either, which is why even now a bipartisan group of members of Congress are saying we need to get a full report on what exactly happened here. We're going to take back some authority. But there was, I think it was Reuters reporting, finding in Venezuela people who knew some of the people who were killed in one of these strikes. And it was like the boat had cocaine and was headed to Trinidad. And some of the people on board had just been offered some money. They needed some money. Here's some money to go drive this boat to Trinidad. And it's like a person in Venezuela who gets offered money to drive a boat to Trinidad and they get killed. And while I don't want drug trafficking, you have a Trump administration that's, number one, trying to lay a groundwork for justification to go to war with Venezuela, it seems, who is targeting Venezuela when that's actually not the source of our drug problem. That's not even close to the primary source of our drug problem. While the reallocation of resources going so hard at the deportations are taking away from actual drug trafficking prosecutions. So we're actually not going after the source of the problem, these extensive drug trafficking networks, but just wanting to make a big show of, look, we blew up a boat without much due diligence, and that maybe, like in the boat to Trinidad example, posed no threat to us. And now we have an even more egregious example of what happened in one of these cases where the boat had already been blown up, people were clinging to the wreckage, and we circled back around and just to make sure they died, which is, you have to have a military objective. And we don't, as I just explained, agree that it's lawful for our military objective to be, if we think a boat could have drugs on it, whether or not we know, and we think it could be heading here, even if we're not sure, our military objective can be to destroy the drugs. Right? That would be their argument. But once you've already blown up the drugs and the mechanism that was delivering the drugs, even if we accepted your faulty premise, you now really have no military objective and you're just killing people to kill people, which is a war crime. Now we're going to shift because we try to have, that was heavy. We had to try to have more fun on the show, to something a little different, which is that because I brought up Trinidad, I'm so sorry, people in Trinidad. Every time I hear Trinidad now, I think of this post by Nicki Minaj. My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. So just to try to give you some lighthearted relief, remember that that's a real post that a real pop star sent out once. And now I think about that every time I hear Trinidad. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should learn more about Trinidad so that that's not the one thing that I think of. But it's hard not to then go, what kind of partner breaks up with you because your testicles got swollen? How do you not? You're getting ready to say till death do us part. And then right before the wedding, you call it off because the testicles got swollen? Oh, and impotent. I guess impotent. That is maybe if you really wanted to have kids with them. Almost certainly not true. And he probably just got testicles swollen. How are you going to connect that? We already covered before, the anti-vax stuff is insane. Millions of people were saved by the vaccine. Tons of people died because they didn't get it with COVID. That was during the COVID era. Remember that you had the rates of Democrats, Republicans going steady like this, dying. And then the vaccine was rolled out and Democrats started dying at a way lower rate than Republicans because Republicans were more likely not to get the vaccine. So I don't need to hear about your swollen testicle cousin's friend and their tragic story to know the safety and the efficacy of the vaccines. But I had to any viewers in Trinidad, I had to tell you that I have a guilt about how that's what pops in my head every time I hear Trinidad. Now, the drug boats being attacked are a part of a broader story here, which is that Trump wants to overthrow Maduro. Maduro's terrible, to be clear. I don't believe they would be overthrowing Maduro because Maduro is anti-gay and they're trying to uphold the Globo Homo order, which is what Tucker Carlson argued. Tucker Carlson argued that the Trump administration, for some reason, is wanting to go to war with Venezuela to uphold the Globo Homo order because Maduro's fighting the Globo Homo.
We have to keep our country gay.
Which I have to say, sounds awesome. Feeling like we are a part of a Globo Homo seems cool. And I would like to get my membership card ASAP. But obviously that's ridiculous. I don't believe that. But I do believe that whatever the reasons are, feeling like Maduro is not aligned with our interests enough, etc., it is extremely irrational for us to once again try to go in and through military force choose who's in power, which is what this would be, even as Maduro is afraid of that happening and is offering up tons of concessions so that we would align more in our interests so that we wouldn't have to topple him. And we've seen how American interventions for the sake of toppling a leader have backfired very badly. And so that's sort of the groundwork there. Now Trump was saying military actions on the ground by the U.S. in Venezuela could start very soon. And then he made this announcement.
He's also doubling down on his threats on Venezuela with the possibility of taking action on drug traffickers on land in that country and perhaps very soon. In fact, this morning on Truth Social, he warned pilots and traffickers that they should consider the airspace above Venezuela to be closed. Want to bring in Fox contributor and former CIA station chief.
All right, fun guy. So that's happening. And then while all that's happening, airspace closed over Venezuela. We're finding out about war crimes. He's saying actions on the ground in Venezuela could start very soon. Meanwhile, here at home, he's threatening to recall Mark Kelly, the Democratic senator, back to active duty so that he can be prosecuted within the military. Prosecuted for what? For making a video reminding service members of their duty, which is just clear. You follow the law if orders and the law contradict, you follow the law instead of the orders. And here's a Fox News take on it.
Jason, the Otto Penn, presidency, I just want to say first and foremost, the Otto Penn presidency, we don't call it the Biden presidency anymore. We call it the Otto Penn presidency.
Hey, Caroline Sunshine, that's your name? Caroline Sunshine? That's crazy. You are not good at humor. Everyone already made that joke before. What's one of those jokes? Can we think of them? I wouldn't even want to. No, let's not. But you think of the jokes that everyone's already made a bazillion times. You just did that, Sunshine. That sounds like I'm being really patronizing. That's her last name. Okay? Oh, that sounded like something worse.
Is part of what set up the collateral damage that President Trump is now having to fix. I mean, you had for 4 years, they lied to the American people, and the White House press corps was complicit in it every single day, a fact that they should absolutely be reminded of. Meanwhile, you have people like Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly reminds me of John McCain. That's not a compliment. He gives off the same loser energy. You can tell they're both frustrated that they're never going to be president because they're not tough enough, they're not smart enough, and Mark Kelly cannot name a single...
She says Mark Kelly reminds her of the late Senator John McCain because they're both not tough. Both who served bravely in the military, John McCain, who was a prisoner of war and had lasting physical damage done because of the torture he endured as an American prisoner of war, and he's not tough enough, and he's dead, and she's mocking him. I don't know what this is about, but apparently making fun of John McCain after his death is a big thing in MAGA. Carrie Lake said John McCain helped lead a color revolution in Ukraine, which is the reason more than 1 million people have been killed or wounded, and hundreds of billions of dollars have been raided from America to fund the Ukraine war. What do they think? You think John McCain was able to get the Ukrainian people to want to overthrow their government? Which is what she's talking about in 2014. That he like the master of propaganda was able to make them do something they didn't want. Maybe he supported them getting out of power, a Kremlin-controlled regime, and they ended up being successful, and they ended up supporting a post-Kremlin-controlled version of Ukraine. That then later, Putin, after Russia had already acknowledged the sovereignty of Ukraine, technically on the world stage, couldn't accept their independence and wanted to militarily invade. Not sure how McCain is to blame for that, Carrie. And then this is a disappointment with the whole Mark Kelly story being, and I've heard now from so many audience members who are in the military saying it's uncontroversial what he said. We learned that a ton. We learn a ton that you do have an obligation to follow the law. And if you got an order that was brazenly illegal, you would have the obligation not to follow it. So it wasn't controversial what he said. You have people like Stephen A. Smith, who I really don't understand Stephen A. Smith. He'll often do this. I think he's obsessed, like his show's titled Straight Shooter. And we should all be straight shooters, right? We should all put principles and facts over partisanship. But I think he tries in a world where there's so much negative stuff about Trump, like him saying that making that video is seditious behavior punishable by death. He feels like he has to then struggle his way into thinking of a chance to criticize Democrats so that he can prove he's a straight shooter and he's not just on one side or the other. But whenever you artificially invent reasons to be upset with Democrats so you can prove I'm so unbiased instead of just actually being unbiased and realizing, nope, this is another case of Trump being the deranged one, then you set up a really humiliating segment like this. What are we doing, Stephen? Watch this.
Respectfully, Senator, what the hell are you doing? Looking into the camera and telling military men and women to ignore the commander-in-chief. How dare you? How dare you do that? That's right, I'm calling out. I never served in the military. That's true. I have family members who did. Some of my best friends have. Marines, Air Force, Navy, Army. I haven't heard one of them. Not one of them.
This feels kind of performative. This feels weirdly performative. If you're about to say none of them thought it was okay, well, I have an opposite anecdote. All the ones I've talked to said it was okay. So where does that leave us?
Say that was okay.
Yeah.
How dare you do that? Is it treason? No. Is it punishable by death? It shouldn't be. So the answer is no. But you know better, Senator Kelly. You know better. How dare you do that? What are you supposed to do? You're a ranking senator. You could go to the Senate. You could go to the House. You can draw up paperwork. You can try to start articles of impeachment if you think there's something illegal. I mean, damn, it ain't like y'all haven't done it before. You impeached the man twice. Where'd that get you? Got his behind back in the White House.
Yeah, another thing that got him back in the White House is people who both sized their way into confusing people into believing Trump wasn't the threat that he was, like you. Maybe another thing that got him back in the White House is people in the media not properly explaining or reporting on accurately the things Trump wanted to do, pretending like his tariff plan made any sense, pretending like his usage of the military made any sense, pretending like his retribution plans were being overly emphasized. Maybe it was people in the media downplaying what Trump intended on doing that helped to get him elected too. And I feel like you might fall into that category, unfortunately. And I love people who will attack both sides. I'm really trying to find more examples. We do a lot in the bonus show I'm going to do today actually, of people who you would say are on my quote unquote side, if we oversimplify it, who I think give the side or give the movement a bad name, or who are just being crazy. And I think that's important. But you should also only do it if it's actually correct. And coming up with this performative rant about how Mark Kelly was so in the wrong for reminding service members of their obligation to the Constitution, while Trump is doing speech after speech trying to compel people into being loyal to him. He said he wants his generals to be like Hitler's generals. That's his language, not mine. And be loyal to him as opposed to the rule of law. Now, speaking of the Hitler reference, y'all know that even if you reference anything with that name in it, MAGA loses it and says you're calling him Hitler and you're saying that thus he should be killed for being Hitler. They always jump to that, even though I was just citing something Trump said. Trump said to John Kelly or to somebody, and multiple people have confirmed this, I want my generals to be like Hitler's generals. And still, you'll get this whoa reaction. So someone calls into Steven's show and says, hey, I disagree with you on that take because we learned you can't set up a framework where following orders is an okay legal justification for committing war crimes. We learned that very prominently with Nazi Germany, because Nazi officials would say, you can't prosecute me, you can't hold me accountable, I was just following orders. And that's actually a really, really apt thing to bring up, because that's the foundational example that prompted this. Is something that we cite often in Explain the Justification Behind Our Laws. And Stephen A. Smith acts like the guy is saying we're in Nazi Germany.
Eugene in Washington, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Hey, Stephen A. First off, I want to say I love your show. I often listen to you. I do happen to disagree with you today on a certain point, especially when it comes to our Democratic leaders that stood up and told the servicemen that they could disobey illegal orders. And the reason why is throughout history, even going back to Nazi Germany, those people that obeyed illegal orders, when they said, "Oh, I was just obeying orders,"
stop that! You stop! No! You stop that BS right now. First of all, don't bring up Nazi Germany on this show when you're talking about American politics in the year 2025. We're not doing that to anybody on either side of the aisle. This is America. This ain't Nazi Germany. Stop it. That's number one. Number two, here's what I was saying. If you're going to quote me accurately. Identify the illegal orders you're talking about. You don't get to speak if you're a senator of the United States who served in the United States.
Yeah, yes, you do. You do. And then the whole debate would have become about the specific legality or illegality of an act, as opposed to the broader reminder that Trump is clearly politicizing the military and believes in destroying the very important principle of military separation from politics, which has been crucial to how our military operates. And Trump's been trying to obliterate that and wants them to be loyal to him. And so they're reminding military service members who are being constantly informed on the complications and the specific cases of when they would have an obligation to do what. They should be informed, and they do get taught this stuff way better than any of us would, or at least me and the people in this room, as to where you draw that line. But a general reminder about the principle is perfectly justified. And then what's so funny is he went, no, you cannot bring up Nazi Germany on this show. And it's like, why? That's a really crucial time where we saw the furthest extent of how bad things can get if you don't instruct service members to follow the law as opposed to one leader's orders. And during the Nuremberg trials, you had that defense of, I was just following orders, which we said, no, that doesn't work. You don't get to massacre people just because someone told you so. And then it's interesting. I also don't want to wade in because I'm not a military scholar or legal expert, but we just covered, they're like, why would you ever say ever that Trump could possibly order an illegal action by the military while we're in a segment about them killing unarmed people who were driving a boat after they'd already hit the boat? And it's like, I don't know the legality around whoever did that, if they should or shouldn't follow. And I agree the chain of command is really important. But let's not act like it's crazy that they could ever get to an obviously illegal order. Please. Please. And also, it's a little too performative, Stephen. I think it's just a little bit much. Do not bring up Nazi Germany on this show. How do you not understand we should learn from history even if we're not equating Hitler to Trump? Anyone with intellectual juice can understand there's plenty to learn from historical eras like that without equating the state of things then to the state of things now.